All right, so this is Mike, and I'm going to give you an idea of what goes into the design phase of all this. So first of all, as I was working through each and every use of this and then different mounting options, I worked on them individually, but then this is one where this would never happen, where everything is all going to be mounted at the same time and all that. So these are the variations that actually go into it. So let's just start from the beginning, and then I use scenes. So up here on the top, you're going to see all these tabs, and if you're in SketchUp, you're going to see the tabs, I think, up here, unless if you set your defaults different for your screen layout. And then if you're in SketchUp Viewer, you're going to see, I believe, along the left side, that's where I see them on my tablet, is I'm going to see them on the left side. So let's just go to tier number 1. Now, the way I do this is I take just a plain old board, and I'm going to hide this for a second. So this is the actual board, and it's just a plain board. That's all I do in the design part of it. And then instead I do like an overlay. I'm going to Control Z. Okay, I do an overlay of a separate piece. Let me just see if I can hide that. Okay, so I do a two-digit because I'm going to, or two-dimension, because I'm going to take this unit. In fact, I'll get rid of the track. Okay, so this is what's going to end up going over to my CNC machine, and then to Vcarve rather, and then eventually over into CNC. So that's how I do the layout of it. I'm going to Control Z those back out of there. So that's what the tray, the main tray, is going to look like from the top. Now, the uses that I have for it. So I want to be able to put one or two drill presses on a lot. I use these small drill presses a lot of times. They're inexpensive. I take them with me in the RV. And so here's the various configurations for drill presses. Now, obviously, again, you wouldn't use two drill presses at the same time in the exact same location. So it would be something like that. And then same thing here, where we'd have two of them going like that way, or the opposite of that. So, or any combination thereof. So it would be drill presses. Those will get mounted using the standard plate that comes with the drill press. The holes that are laid out on the tray are already set to go. These yellow trays that you see, those are custom trays that I make for the drill press based on some joinery stuff that I do. Hopefully, maybe those would be something I can cover in a future video. Okay, and then bandsaws. I have two 10-inch bandsaws. I have a lot of bandsaws, but I have two of the smaller ones, which are the 10-inch, and this is basically the plate for each of those. I just wanted to make sure that the plate sits. The plates are probably going to end up just mounting onto the rails. I think by coincidence there's actually a bolt here, a hole here, and a hole here that can actually bolt them to the track, which would really be cool, but I haven't gone that far yet. I'll deal with that later. And then I use these R&R clamps, and I think ponies would also work on this. I just have to work a little bit on that, or if somebody else wants to use this pony type bar clamps, they could do that. But basically the way that I'm doing this is I'm going to set it up that really this clamp here and the other one, those will have an attachment, a way to attach it to the track, the T-track down below. And the other ones in between there don't need any attachment. They'll basically be held down by the fact that the two outside ones are held. I'll show that when I do a project on it, but this would be a typical glue up where I'm taking some 1x3 whatever, doing that and gluing that up. And so I put some clamps on the bottom, but then I also use some clamps on top. Again, these may be able to, or at least some of them should be able to be bar clamps. I wanted to be able to get at least one Craig, if not more, on there. So basically with the Craigs, because over the years they've come out with so many different configurations that there doesn't seem to be any way to mount any particular item. So instead, what I'll do is I'll figure that the Craig would be mounted to a plate, a board, and then that board would be uniform. In other words, that board will fit on here on the tray, and so it could be 1, 2, or 3 Craigs easily. Then I do a lot of mounting of my threaded tenons, and so this would be a typical way that I would do some. I'll cover this in, later, but basically this is a way to temporarily mount a 1x3 riser, like a board or steel, and then use these holes right here. There's 5 holes. Use a hinge bit or a wood or a metalworker's metal punch on those, center punch, and then punch. That would be marking the holes, getting them ready to pre-drill. So I'll cover that later. As far as then, once let me go to the index actually for that. Okay, so here's that same board again. There's no wood under it right now. This is ready for the this is ready to go into the CNC, but I'll just do a real quick walk around. So there's holes here for pencils. There's a slot here for a 3-inch Inker rule. There's a slot here for a 6-inch Inker rule. There's a slot here for a speed square. There's a 3 holes here actually for the task automatic center finding jigs. I use those quite frequently. I use 3/4 inch sockets on those R&R clamps, so I have a hole here and a hole here that I can put that wrench handle in and always have it handy. These 2 goofy looking shapes here, they're for the Bessie clutch style clamps, where the clamp can actually go right through the bottom and then just spin around 360 degrees. These holes are for alignment of the feet below. There's a hole here and a hole here. I'll cover that on how to set up the feet below, basically the stand that this whole thing gets mounted on. And then there's going to be some drill presses. Again, I covered that a few seconds ago, but I was able to get 2 of those drill press holes in the CNC run because I have a 24-inch capacity, but the 3rd hole would be drilled manually. No big deal, because all you got to do is set the drill press on there, or just the column from it, mark that hole, and then manually drill that. And then these are the bolt holes. There's a couple of different configurations. If this unit is being mounted to a Festool or a Craig dog hole workbench, then this set here and this outer one here would be the way to mount the board to the feet, because then those will actually align with the holes in the Festool and Craig. But if you're going to mount to a like that Red Harbor Freight type rolling box, then it would be better to use these 2 insides. And again, because this is knockdown, you can actually switch those around from time to time, as long as you use knockdown threaded joinery rather than a solid wood foot on it. Then this is the center point. This is basically for reference only. This has something to do with my CNC run. And then what I've done here is I've set it up, this little hole right here. I always want to be able to have one of those metalworkers 1/4 inch center punches. So I've got one right there ready to go. And on the other side I actually have oh, here it is, hinge bit. I use a 1/4 inch hinge bit quite frequently as well. That's for the functions that are going to occur right here, which is when we're setting up the marking of the 5 holes on the end grain of a 1x3 riser. And then here's the 5 holes. They're at an exact 1/2 inch on center. Here I use both types of glue. I use conventional wood glue. So this would be a slot for that bottle to be inverted upside down, and that way the glue is always ready to come out the little tip. And then here's a slot for the Gorilla Glue, and the Gorilla Glue has these goofy little shape on their cap, so that's incorporated into this. This area over here is basically a repeat of everything that's over here. And then here I have a mortise for a 9-inch D-wall tape measure. That's my go-to tape measure in the shop. I don't take them out on job sites, obviously, but I don't go out on job sites anymore. So that one, actually, that ruler works for just about everything in the shop. Here I have for a digital caliper, slot that would drop in there, and then back here there's a supply of 1/4 inch dowels. I use those a lot for like these alignment things down here, alignment over here. I'm always looking for 1/4 inch. I use little socket bolts. 1/4 inch socket bolts work really well. Otherwise 1/4 inch dowels. So that's the tour of that. All right, so then let's go back here. I've covered the uses, which would be drill presses, bandsaws, clamps, Craigs, jigging. Okay, now let's go up to the second tier. As we get taller and as I start to get even more functional. This tier number 2, 3, and 4 will be different videos and different. If I'm doing up a instructable on this, that'll be a separate instructable. But I wanted to get the joinery for it here. I want to be prepared for that. So that's this slot back here and the slot back here are going to be the preparing that basically they're the mortise for the risers, which would be here and here a riser for the tier number 2. Tier number 2 would be basically a 5.5 inch by 24 inch board, and there's going to be some slots and so on that are going to hold drivers and routers. So this is as far as I've gotten as far as getting creative on drawing up those risers. Then there would be a little later a tier number 3, and that would be my, I call it my joinery tier, my tray, and that has all kinds of stuff mounted on it. That's for when I'm doing joinery. So I've got a whole bunch of hex bolts, and those are all 5/16, not hex bolts, but 5/16 bolts. There'd be sockets and washer bolts and things like that, all ready to go. All my GRKs. There's some stuff here for my threaded tenons. Just see if those are out there. Edit, unhide, all. There they are. Okay, I was missing those. So those are the 3-hole threaded tenons. Here's the 5-hole threaded tenons. Here's those rectangular washers that you're going to see a lot of when you go down here. And again, you can make those yourselves. Otherwise, I do have a supply of them from time to time. And then over here again, tape measure, digital, pencils, Incra, rule, and then also the speed square, and then a couple of wrenches here. And then I'm going to use I use 1/2 inch socket wrenches a lot, so there's a couple holes here for that. Again, we've got the slot for the gluing, the glue up type of processes where I'm doing that kind of joinery, and that would be for the scraper. Again, the conventional wood glue, the Gorilla wood glue, and then I use Allen wrenches a lot, like on these socket bolts, and the different socket bolts have different size Allen wrenches, so there's a spot there for a couple of different Allen wrenches. And then here again you see the rectangle, which would be this right here. That's the washer that goes right here. It just has more support and it's easier to get in there than a round washer. So that's what that is, and that's holding it basically to that's how this is going to attach in a knockdown mode to tier number 2. And then over here again, I'm preparing for the next tier, which will be tier number 4. So that's a mortise right there. So that's tier number 4. Tier number 4 is basically the fun stuff. It's a cup holder, or basically a support. I call it an anti-tail wag support. That's for when the dogs are running around and tail wagging, and then they always tend to knock over my adult beverage after 5. So that basically a bottle would sit in here. It rests on tray number 3, but this helps support that. This would be more for coffee cups sitting right in there, and then here would be a slot for a digital device. I have an 8-inch Android device that I can slip in there, and there's even a hole for the charger that goes through the bottom. And then here I use a iPhone, I forget what it is, a 7 I think or something, but I have an otter case on it, and so I made that so that I can hold the otter case. And then again, a hole for the charger. Here, because of the CNC, I'm using USB thumb drives a lot, so I do that. And then these little holes right here, what I found is that the Android and the phone, if you stand them up, they don't stand up all that well. They want to tip over. Otherwise I'd have to go really deep with the mortises. So if I just put a couple of 1/4 inch dowels in here behind the device, they support the device. And then up here, the last would be that rectangular washer again, the steel washer. So there we go. And as far as mounting the bench, there's a bunch of different options for mounting. Basically I call these the feet. So it would be this one and this one are the feet. I'm showing them as 1/4 by 1 steel, and I'll show you how to make those. You do them if you have access to welding or have somebody else weld them, and then I have a jig to basically help with the welding part. You can do these out of wood, and you can do whatever else you want. It's just a matter of I would recommend at least sticking with the size that I have here. I'll show that later, but the thing about wood is that it's not as knockdownable. In other words, if you use GRKs to hold these to the tray to that, then it's a question of how many times you can take that apart. The other thing is I've got some other attachments that are going to go out from here, and in order to use those, you need to be able to get at some nuts and so on from the inside. And so I just found that this method of support works really, really well. Now here's an example. So if I mount it, I have a bunch of this yellow scaffolding around. This is that painter's scaffolding. I don't show the casters on it right now, but it has casters. And I think they call it painter's scaffolding. The distance between the two posts here is 27.5 inches. And so the problem with that, not a problem, not a serious problem, but the deal is that to use the brackets on that, which I like, I use that a lot, is these brackets need to be placed at 27.5 inches apart. So then that is one of those rare situations where you'd have to manually, I'll show the location for it, but you'd manually drill here to mount these braces below. And again, you can see now, but the holes in the feet themselves are set up with right here for a bolt and a bolt, because the holes in that scaffolding are 2 inches on center, and then so are the holes right here. So you can see that you could then from the other side mount that, and that's again all knockdown. So that works. That's going to be fun. That's going to really work well on and really use up a lot of that. I have a lot of those carts around. Another thing I have around, I bought a number of years ago. I'm not, Harbor Freight is Harbor Freight, and but they have some things that really worked out well, and these toolboxes have. The drawers on them are a little bit sketchy here and there if you really get rough on them, the hinging and stuff like that, the door slides. But for the most part, they're really handy to have around. I removed the tops on them. I don't use those, but there happens to be a couple of holes that they have for a mounting of their handle right up in here. And so the alignment of these brackets is such, the feet is such that if you use this hole here, this one, and this one to mount your brackets, then you're good to go. And you can see that that's going to mount right in there, and those will align with the holes on the red cart. So again, here we go back to everything all in one, which would be insane, not going to happen, all at the same time. Again, there's other tabs that are up here. You click on the index, it'll bring you back to that. I will have a cut list. I'm still working on that, but basically I'm not done with tier number 2, 3, and 4, so I don't go by this at all. If you have this file, don't use this. It's just the main one right here that will be, because that's all I'm focusing on right now, is actually tray number 1. And then there will be other things. There will be cut lists for other parts, like these risers and some of the fillers, and there's some other bracketry and so on. Okay, and then I'll even show you how to make a do-it-yourself threaded tenon in terms of the hole spacing for all the holes on those and how to make them. And then again, here's my CNC setup. This is the way I do it. This is basically, if I click on Zoom Extents right now, I can see, oops, I have a couple of holes here. How about that? I have to get rid of those. But if you click on Zoom Extents, what you'll find is that Zoom Extents in SketchUp is a term that allows you to look at everything on the whole sheet. Well, there's nothing out there. And so when I transfer this over to Cnc, to Vcarve, I need to have nothing out there, because I'm going to export or basically import this in to Vcarve. So I'll cover that later. So there you go. That is my MikroBench, portable, expandable, whatever. That's going to be the subject of this Instructable and of this video. So hope you enjoy.